Thank you. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming. A warm welcome from our side, UNSA and JEF. I'm Maria, a board member of the Junge Europäische Föderalisten in Maastricht, and together with Peter, we will host you today. So thank you everybody for coming, and first of all, Happy Women's Day from our sides, very important. And as well, thank you for coming, even though it's a very hard time at the moment. We know that, and we really appreciate that you're here. Also, thank you to the panelists that you are here and taking your time for us to explain us how politics are going in Maastricht or in the Netherlands. You will get the floor later and can introduce yourself, but here are Anna Lucas from Groene Links, Alexander Loring from Reset, an expert on politics, Professor Claudia Peters, Maren from PVDA, then Jules from Vault, and Giuseppe from VVD. Then as well, thank you, Werner, for streaming today, and as well to Studium Generale that they are supporting us on this event today. And what we need to mention is that this panel is not representative for the whole politics in the Netherlands. We weren't able to invite everybody. That would become maybe a mess because there would be too many people. But in the audience, there are two other politicians from Mood and the Christian Union. So if you have questions afterwards, you can reach them. And now Peter will hand over.
Yes, just really quickly pointing at the candidate from Mood sitting over there. That's an independent party from Maastricht. As we said, not represented on this panel. Okay, I will start briefly going through the agenda. We will start with an opening round asking general questions to all the participants. Then we will go into a more open discussion format, and at the end, you in the audience and also online, you have the possibility to ask questions to us. Drop these questions in the YouTube comments or go to our Instagram Q&A box. Obviously, in the live audience, we have someone with a microphone on the side, and show up your hand when we're there. Right, so let's jump right into the introduction round. I would like to give the floor first to Professor Claudia Peters, who will give us a general overview over the political system in the Netherlands and especially the municipal politics in the Netherlands. Professor Peters.
Yeah, thanks. Very shortly, I promise. I have 10 short talking points for you, trying to stress the thing that I guess most of you are not Dutch, would maybe surprise the most in the Dutch local political system. So, and very short. One, in the Netherlands we have three main layers of government with direct elections. The national government, seated in The Hague, the provincial government for Limburg, seated here in Maastricht, and local or municipal government. We have, at the moment, 344 municipalities in the Netherlands. And every year it's less because they amalgamate. Two, once every 4 years we have elections for the local council in all Dutch municipalities at the same day. And in another year for the provinces. So the last time was in 2018. As these local elections are all on the same day, the elections have a certain national character. So national politicians visit their fellow party members everywhere around the country to assist with the political campaign, and they participate even in debates on national TV. 4, and this you probably all know, all Dutch and EU citizens older than 18 can vote in local elections, provided they are registered as a resident of the municipality. But I guess you all know that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. 5, so we vote for the composition of the local council of Maastricht. The Dutch mayor is not elected, and he or she has nothing to do with these elections. Actually, he or she is in charge of organizing the elections, but he is not, or she is not elected. one of the few or the only European country, I think, that organizes things like this. In most municipalities, both independent local parties and local branches of national parties participate in the elections, and both are here tonight. 7, due to the proportional representation system that we have in the Netherlands, it is extremely rare that one single party wins the majority after the elections. So almost always a coalition has to be formed. 8, after the elections, the council members start negotiations about the formation of the executive power in the municipality, the board of mayor and aldermen. In Dutch, het college van burgemeester en wethouders. And they negotiate about the main policies for the next 4 years, often formulated in a coalition agreement, and about the number and portfolios of their aldermen in this board. 9, the board of mayor and aldermen is in charge for the same 4 years, like the council members, and with the civil servants, they implement the policies as often agreed in the coalition agreement, and provide the services to the citizens. And being an alderman is a full-time job. A council member is not, though. It takes around 15 hours of work, maybe more, every week. But that's the average, the national average. 15.9 was the name of a report about local councillors a few years ago. And then 10, the council, we are discussing that, of course, tonight. The council has 2 main tasks. So you have the executive power, the board of mayor and aldermen, and then the council determines the policies and the local legislation and scrutinizes, or as we say in Dutch, control the board of mayor and aldermen. And the ultimate instrument they have for that is that they can send away, fire one or more, or all of the aldermen. So they are, in the end, the council is the ultimate power at the local level. So it's good that we discuss it tonight.
Thank you, Professor Peters, for this introduction. I'm sure we will come back to many of the points that she just raised. Also, of course, if in the audience, online or offline, there was anything you would like to know more about from Professor Peters at the end, feel free to direct your questions directly at her. Of course, the same for any other candidate, in case you want to know anything specific from them. Let's jump into our intro round. I'd like to start on the left with Giuseppe. Giuseppe, why do you think should students vote in municipal elections?
Thank you very much. I'll first introduce myself quickly. I'm Giuseppe Notenboer, and I'm number 2 on the list for the VVD. The VVD is a liberal party. That means we think that you should fill in your life as much as you want to yourself on sexuality, religion, all these kind of things. Your question about why should students vote? Well, I think everybody should vote, although I don't think it should be forced that you have to go and vote. But I think as many people should vote as possible. And what we see in Maastricht is that the student population is maybe less informed, votes maybe less as well. And we make very important decisions about things which happen to students. So like we make sure that the parks are nice for you, like housing is there or affordable or not at the moment, to be honest, and international connections with public transport and these kind of things. So,
thank you. I will pass the question on to Jules then from Volt. Why do you think students should vote, a recent graduate?
Yes, thank you. My name is Jules Orchens. I'm the leading candidate of Volt, and by being that, I want to give a small correction to Peter's very useful instruction that indeed most parties are either local or national, except for Volt. We are the only pan-European party in Europe. We are represented in 3 different parliaments and locally including Italy and Germany. The reason why we believe that it's very valuable and even crucial that you as an EU citizen or as someone who lived long enough in Maastricht votes for the faith of the city is for many reasons. Volt really has as one of its objectives that Maastricht should be connected more with the rest of Europe. Indeed, among the other things, also via public transport and via offering more language courses for free through university. But the main reason why you should vote is actually on, I think, a more moral ground. You may actually plan to leave in a few years for Maastricht, but I've traveled all around Europe, and I have also graduated from a bachelor 7 or 6 years ago here in Maastricht, and I can guarantee you that the problems that you are facing right now here in Maastricht, including the unaffordable housing, has been a problem for the past 7 years. So please invest in the democracy here today so you can invest in the future of the next generation students as well. That would be my first call why you should vote in these elections.
Thank you, Jules. We'll pass the question on to Maren. Why should students vote?
Thank you very much. My name is Maren Slangen. I've been a council member for 4 years now for the Labour Party. I have actually become more and more convinced that students should vote, like every other group in the city, because over the past few years I have been seeing that it's very easy for us 39 people in the council member to scream and yell at each other about all kinds of policies, whether it's regarding health, whether it's regarding education or housing, as Jules mentioned. Indeed, the thing is, if we do not know exactly who we represent there, it is just words. It's just, well, sometimes it's literally just screaming and shouting. It's not something that we should be proud of, myself including, but that sometimes is the case. And I believe that students, like every other person in this city, should feel very much how they are not only represented in policies where you can say, oh, that's a typical student policy and you're either against or for because you're against or for the amount of students or for where students live in the city. No, you're represented in every kind of policy, whether it's general education policy of the city, whether it's general health policy of the city, the housing policy, but also what our city would look like, building-wise. How do we build our city in a way that it's actually nice to live there for everyone, but also a decent city to live where it's safe and sound. And I believe students are super important in that. I'm also very honest, you're not more important or less important than any other person. You're just as important because you're a Maastrichtenaar. You're here, you live here, you're part of the city, and that's why you should make your voice heard. You're just one of all of us.
Thank you very much, Maren. We will pass the question on to Anne Lucas from GroenLinks.
Hello, my name is Anne Lucas. I'm with the Green Left Party here in Maastricht. I think out of everyone here, probably with the least amount of experience, but I'll try my hardest. So why should you vote as a student? I think a lot of it has already been said by the people who spoke before me. It's indeed that that local politics is one of the most intimate ways that you can do politics. And these are also often things that you feel also on a very day-to-day basis. And you as a student living here in Maastricht, it's also very important that the city is as much yours as it is everyone else's. And this often tends to not be the case, so it's also very important that you feel at home and that you feel represented as well within the city. Not just, also, as said before, not just for yourself, but also for your future generation of students. And as the Green Left Party, for us, sustainability is very important. So we would also like to say that this is not just for the future generation students after you, but just for the future generations in general that will come to live on this earth after us.
Thank you very much, Anne. Alexander from Reset, why should students vote?
You forgot to say last but not least. Thank you, Peter, for this invitation. And before I start, I would actually like to thank, indeed, the United Nations Student Association and the Young European Federalists for hosting this very important debate. Or should I rephrase discussion, because I hope we do not get into a political debate, but indeed a call on more than just voting, but indeed political engagement. Introduce myself quickly, Alexander Lervink, I'm 32 years old. I'm currently still studying at UNU Merit, And before that, I studied at FASOS for a quite extensive amount of years. And before that, I was actually very much engaged in the nightlife as a promoter and event manager and DJing on the side. So I've had a very intimate experience of what it is to be a student. After passing my bachelor's, I decided to start my own political party. And this has led me to experience from nothing into the top of the local politics. And what I've experienced from this is that whether you like it or not, our current system, such as it is actually about prioritizing issues. And a big reason why we are struggling with problems such as housing or whatever, and this is not just on the local level, but on a national level, on an international level, it is because there's a very big dissatisfaction and mistrust in politics. And it pains me because we are right now at an historical time, not just the Maastricht city, which has a changing, shifting demographic, but also on a larger scale, we're just coming out of a pandemic. And wherever you go, wherever you look, we're always confronted with the same kind of problem-solving crisis. There's some kind of a lack of leadership. And this comes because of this mistrust, because of this inability to engage. So yes, voting is important, and all the reasons which my colleagues gave here before to you today are very compelling ones. I would like to add to that, you do not only vote for yourself, vote most importantly also for the people who have been here before you and the people who are coming here after you. Because as a student, there's a structural mishap that you are here only for 3 years. You will rarely see the results of your vote, but it doesn't mean that it's more or less important. I would actually argue it's even more important because it makes you more responsible, basically, for the future generations following in your footsteps. But I would even go a step further. I don't think you should only vote. Voting is a remnant, a relic of the 19th century, to be honest. Right now, especially our students, we are more highly educated, more informed, more connected than ever before. And this knowledge, this collective wisdom we have, we need to tap this to enrich the public debate and to, I would argue, honestly, come up with an alternative system. And this will only happen if you engage. The more you disengage, the more you strengthen the status quo, which has not been working in your or our interest, to be frank. So do more than voting. Go activate, go mobilize, go fight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now jump into the discussion, and my co-host Maria will open this. Feel free to the panelists to signal us if you want to jump in.
Yeah, so the first question from our side. So Jules was mentioning that offering language courses to overstep barriers maybe, and that there's more knowledge today that students should go voting, but do you think that there are any obstacles or challenges that students, not only international but maybe also Dutch students, are facing when it comes to voting itself? So you, Claudia Peters has mentioned before a bit not confusing but very wide-ranged system here in the Netherlands. So do you think there are any challenges for students? Jules?
If I may respond to that, because I actually think there's a kind of a bridge to be built between this topic of offering free language courses at the university and the fact that students are often excluded from our society here in Maastricht. So a few years ago, 3.5 years ago, I went studying in Estonia. And in my first class at Tartu University, the director of the university came and said, you know, you may be planning here to stay just for 3 years, that's all right. But actually, we would love you to stay here for much longer because you're international talented students. So if you want to, you can take an Estonian language course on any level because we want you to become part of society. And then in a next lecture, they started to explain us how the elections work here. They started to explain us basically how the entire city works. And within a few hours, I already felt more of an inhabitant of the municipality of Tartu. And that is actually quite incredible if you compare that to the experience that most students have here at Maastricht. Because the underlying message that a lot of students get here is that Maastricht is basically a stop station for you, and we rather like you to leave in 3 years from now because we don't like English-speaking waiters, right? And I think that is really where the attitude already goes wrong in our city. Language courses are just one example of that, but more in general, there is an underlying message that European new residents of our city are not being treated as full Maastrichtians, even though, as you already rightly said, Maren, they are really Maastrichtians, and you are.
Thank you for the answer. Maren, you just wanted to continue there?
Yeah, thanks. I think the question should be a bit more extended to local politics and how the municipality works in general, which I think goes for both international and Dutch-speaking students. I myself came here 11 years ago to study. I don't think I studied as long as my colleague, but we did follow the same master's program. So the thing is that all the things that are being discussed within the municipality council, council proposals, letters from the alderman or the mayor, they're very complicated in a way that if you're not daily included in this whole spectacle, you may have no clue what it's about. Whereas it's very important to all people in the city. And this, I don't think that specifically goes for the language barrier, because I think it's also very complicated for Dutch-speaking residents to understand literally what is going on, what is being voted for, what it means if we pose a motion and the alderman says it can happen or it cannot happen. But besides that, I think the voting pass that we received is only in Dutch. I think Jules actually translated it to English, or the letter that was with there, which I think is a very good step. But of course, Jules shouldn't be the one to do it. The municipality should be the one to do it. And also their communication in general, not just 4 weeks before the election starts, but in general throughout the 4 years, should be more directed to all the people in the city. And sometimes you could even question, if you're talking about targeting specific groups, if somewhat of the communication should be in Maastricht, because a lot of people, they feel more accommodated by a Maastricht letter. Or I'm not saying you should offer letters in maybe 10 or 20 different languages, but you should really think about your communication and who you want to address and why you want to address those people. So I think it's not just a matter that is very important with these elections coming up. We should be way more working with this throughout those 4 years, because it would be too easy to say, oh, now it's elections, now we find it very important that you feel heard, but well, we'll see you in 4 years again, or not you, but other students. So we should be working with that throughout the 4-year term.
Thank you, Maren. Alexander just wanted to add something on that, and afterwards, Anna.
A quarter of the Maastricht population doesn't speak Dutch. Maybe you are, well, I guess we are, because we are politically involved. Most of us, we have a political background, but there's this principle in the European Union, which I'm very much fond of, the principle of subsidiarity. The idea is that the decision-making needs to happen at the lowest level to basically fill the democratic deficit is the official title. The idea is that as the local politics, the local representation should be a mirror, a reflection of what the local population is. For that same reason, I would argue we should have at least a quarter of our debate happening in English. I once tried to address the council in English, and I was very, very strongly reprimanded that no, we speak Dutch here. At the same time, I can also tell you that one of the first meetings I've had as a work group from the council, and I walked in and everybody was speaking local dialect. And just for me, they started to actually get back to Dutch. And I'm thinking to myself, how beautiful would it be if a quarter of the city council were English speakers. Imagine, I mean, like, it would completely change the debate. And I do not think this is a bad thing. I think this is a very good thing, which we should be proud of. Not because English is a threat to the local identity, au contraire. We are building a new identity of Maastricht. Because I think this is the underlying issue, to be honest. It's the identity crisis, identity politics of today. And that in the face of globalization, there's a fear for conformity, of uniformity. And I get it, I see it. And it is very difficult. People want to, you know, put their heels in the sand and safeguard the local identity, and they should. But the danger what we are facing, and what should be the main issue in our politics today, is how are we going to conciliate, to unite our differences? Because indeed, the motto of the European Union is unity in diversity, but we have a lot of diversity, but not much unity nowadays. I just came from a summit on the European cities and regions, and I was shocked by how much disunion there is in the European Union. So the problems which we are facing here in Maastricht, they indeed count all over Europe. And the big luxury, the big responsibility which we have is that the conjuncture of conditions which we have in Maastricht, being an old city, yet with a very young, progressive, international population, you have the best of both worlds. And this is what makes Maastricht so compelling, so interesting as a potential experiment, for lack of a better word, of what the future of Europe could be. I was at this summit, and I'm closing after this. At this summit, I was basically making the point, as Maastricht, we are free riding on our reputation of being the birthplace of the European Union. And it kind of annoys me that that's the best we have to show for. I think we can do more, and this is why you should vote, and do more than that.
Okay, Anna.
Yeah, I need to reshuffle my thoughts real quick, but no, I just kind of, also when I raised my hand, that was actually before Maren spoke, because everything that she said is basically something that I fully agree with, is that there's a need, somewhat of a communication barrier when it comes to the municipality and its citizens. I've noticed this I've worked for the International Student Help Desk for 3 years, so I've seen a lot of these problems quite firsthand, where the main issue that you basically, the entire office was essentially just to be that bridge between the municipality and the students. And what you notice there very much is that a lot of the issues could be very, like, also in terms of that there's an obstacle in terms of voting, or why I constantly keep getting the question, but why should I vote, is because the municipality feels very, very distant from people, and it's also in the way indeed that it communicates with its residences. And sorry, yeah, I'm just sorry.
We can come back to you then in 1 second. I wanted to direct a question actually again, because we have heard in various formulations now that there seems to be some kind of divide between languages. I don't think it stops at languages. Maybe there's, but what we see is there's maybe kind of the city life, and then there's the student life, and then within the city maybe there's Dutch speakers, there's Maastricht speakers. So what I would like to ask is, you've all been talking about how students should kind of integrate in this, but if there is this resistance, and if especially international students are actually only staying for 3 years, which many are, what is kind of, isn't it also a legitimate kind of feeling to say, why would someone who's just staying very briefly, why should they even get to decide on me, on my life? And I'm living here have been living here for 20 years, will be for another 30 maybe. This question goes to Jules, and then afterwards to Giuseppe.
I think that's a really good question, and it very much intertwines also what Alexander and Maren already suggested earlier. look, many new residents, non-Dutch speaking Maastrichtians stay only temporarily. This is true, but there are two reasons why your voice is should be a very important voice in a democratic debate. The first reason is one that I already mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, is that I left Maastricht 7 years ago. I came back to Maastricht 1.5 years ago, and we still had the same challenges among international students. We still had the same challenges in terms of bad communication with the municipality, overpriced housing, no real coordination via the university to integrate in our local society. So that is really the first thing. And then the second thing is that we notice that more and more internationals are actually staying in Maastricht, to our great relief actually, because let's be very honest, that's what a university is really for. A university is meant to invest in talented people and let them try to stay here, right? That's the economic reasoning behind a university, at least. And we see that by people who are starting to work for the university. We see that people who graduate, internationals, are starting little businesses here. And I would say if we start to invest more in good public transport with Brussels and Cologne, there will be even more reasons to stay here, because you are being educated often to start working in Brussels, and it is actually around the corner, but public transport is still really treating us as some kind of outskirt of the Netherlands, so it's much easier to come to Amsterdam than to Brussels. So, you know, a lot can also improve on that regard. But to bring it back really to this multilingual challenge in Maastricht, I don't know how it works for the other parties, but Volt has very much invested in doing a 3-lingual campaign. We did everything in English, in Dutch, and in Maastrichtian. And we notice, indeed, what Alexander also actually pointed out a bit, is that because of the identity politics that seem to intensify in Maastricht, it's almost as if you're already making a statement by using a certain language. When you're talking in Dutch, you seem to exclude the international population. When you start talking in English, you hear angry voices coming from the locals. And this is once again a reminder that elections indeed are not enough to create a civil society in a city. You actually really need to institutionalize the conversation and institutionalize the discussion between different citizens. And the good thing is that an answer to that problem already exists in Aachen and in East Belgium. You have a Burgerraad there, a council of citizens. So one way of really solving some of the challenges in Maastricht is not only by recognizing the Europeanness of our city, but also by looking to the rest of Europe, because many of the solutions are already there. But Maastricht is a unique city in the Netherlands, so we shouldn't only learn from other Dutch places, we should really look around us, because many of the solutions are already being offered elsewhere in Europe.
Perfect. Thank you. Giuseppe, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much. Jules said a lot of things already, so I'll see what I have left. First of all, I think everybody should vote, and don't think like, okay, I'm only here for 2 years and then after I'm gone, because as also others said, there will be people after you who are also students. I lived in Milan for a while doing my Erasmus exchange, and if I had the possibility to vote, I would have voted. We have in the Netherlands, we have a system where you cannot vote as an international for the national government. But we say local is so close to you. We do so much things for you, which is really so close that we want you to participate. And therefore, I think that even if you're here for a short while, you should participate if you get the chance. I heard also somebody argue that we should start speaking in English in the city council. Well, I disagree with that. I speak Maastricht myself as well, and also English. But we have also quite some old people in the city council who speak only Dutch. And I don't know how that would work out if half of the people cannot understand the other half of the people. And we're not Belgium, so I'd like to keep it just on Dutch if that doesn't matter to you. Participation, we also talked about participation a bit. I acknowledge that it's very difficult to participate in the Dutch politics if you're an international and you don't speak Dutch. We as VVD, we have some people who actually only speak English at the moment, and I took them to a general members meeting. They voted on who would be on the list for us, who would be where on the list, and they sometimes talk about these things because they think it's really interesting to vote on things which we then later on decide in the council, because we're a representative democracy. So in our party already some things are being decided upon, and you can participate in that, and I'm pretty sure that Volt and probably other parties would also facilitate that when they have the chance to. So I'd say always do that. I think I'll keep it at that.
Thank you. I saw Anne Lucas wanted to speak.
So I think also when it comes to a lot of this is also maybe a recognition, because we talk very often as if students and citizens from Maastricht are such separate groups. However, the issues that students face and the issues that are faced within the city also have a really huge overlap. There's not just like two distinct groups of like, well, these are student issues and these are solely Maastricht, how do you say this? The people who've been the non-student issues, because sorry, I don't want to call them just like local, because I guess everyone is, since we're all, as Maren said, we're all Maastrichtenaren here. And that also means that you see that very often, and there are also discussions within the party, is that when you talk about stuff, for example, if there's an issue is that affects cyclists, it's not going to affect students differently than it would affect non-students. And thus it's also very important that if you vote, that you don't only think about it as okay, I'm only doing this for my fellow students, or I'm only going to think about this in like student terms, but also the recognition that this is also something that you do for your fellow citizen, especially if you, especially because a lot of these things are, again, as mentioned also several times beforehand, things that are quite close to home, to put it that way. Like it could literally be about something that is happening in your street, and there's just very important to have your voice be heard, and that also that you're represented well in politics. That also in the municipality. That they also know what you guys think about stuff, how you think the city should look like. So I think that's also quite important that, we shouldn't just group, like for example, housing. Housing is not just a student issue. It's a Maastricht-wide issue that a lot of people struggle with, and it often also comes down to certain similar roots. And that's also very important that is addressed, so that if you experience this housing problem, then you might also think for yourself, well, not only my fellow students might experience this, but also people locally who do here too. And then it's even more important that you vote in accordance to these issues, and then also, just let your voice be heard.
Thank you. I would like to address one question to Alexander, and that is you talked about your experience in the municipality council when you tried to start a debate in English. Do you feel that maybe even outside the city council, for international students, international inhabitants of Maastricht, are there possibilities already existing or building up at the moment where they could engage and be welcome, also working together with the local population? How can students in general participate in politics? Because you said do more than vote. So this is the question: what more than voting can we do?
Thank you, Peter. It's a very good question. Here and there, small little projects. There isn't yet, if you ask me, a global vision on how to really tap what I mentioned before, the collective wisdom, because indeed it should not be only about tapping into students, it should be about tapping everyone. Students alone are not going to solve it. We need the bigger the debate, the bigger the discussion, the better the solution we will come up with. And this is indeed where I think a lot can still be done. What my colleague Jules mentioned about the Citizen Assembly is one step the right direction. There are many more steps we can and we should be doing. Something we've been experimenting this year, I believe, or it was supposed to be even before that, but because of the corona it got delayed, was the citizen budgeting, a very interesting participatory approach to engage all citizens, all individuals. But to come back to the previous question, because I wanted to make an important point on why is it important to vote and why people do not vote, because very simply, as I mentioned in my opening statement, there is this dissatisfaction, this mistrust, and I feel that also it is very easy for us to point the blame at a certain abstract issue. But I think we should also be able to look much more at ourselves. And there's something very cynical, very pervert about elections. This is a time when we are accentuating our differences. And we're trying to shoot each other down. You know, like I can almost suspect my colleagues right now making notes on how to destroy my argument, but I hope not. But the party leader of Giuseppe from the Liberal Party came up with this idea a few weeks ago to find this local symbol, a very interesting person in the last century, I believe, historical figure who was a teacher and like building on this education platform, doing very good stuff. And to use this person as a rallying call, basically, for political parties, even if we are in an election, that we can unite behind one uniting team. And I'm very sorry to say, but there were very few of us there present. I was, Giuseppe was, but many were not. And why not? Because election time. And this is something where I call upon you to, you know, think critically. It's one thing to have a good speaker who appeals to your feelings, your rational, whatever. But what I think you should really be looking for is someone who can unite, who can overcome the differences, because that's what, in the end, democracy should be about. And this is a skill more than ever needed today. And especially in a divided city as Maastricht, because let's face it, we are divided. And this is a little bit the difficulty for you guys, I get it as well, is that you are here just for a very short amount of time, the workload is huge, and you want to socialize, you want to go out, you don't have time to spend in following the debates. And so we are trying to concentrate within a few weeks the subtlety, the nuance of years of policy making. It's impossible. And this is why we will reduce our policies to very simple sound bites. You can listen to that, but yeah, don't expect much. Or you can take the extra step and really do your research and really talk with people you trust and, you know, go interview all of us individually after this debate or online or wherever. Because I believe in this element of, you know, trust, and this Klaartje will definitely know this whole subject of delegative democracy, where it is basically built on I trust you, so you tell me who I should vote for, and I will tell you who you should vote for, and not on big party lines, but on very specific issues.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I will pass it on to Marin, who wanted to react, and afterwards to Klaartje.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to the to something Alexander said about the language in our council, and I guess Klaartje can correct me if I'm wrong. But the way I see this evening is also to inform students on how local politics specifically, and maybe politics in the Netherlands, works. And one of the things, whether you like it or not, is that we have to use one of the two official languages of the Netherlands in our political system, which is either Dutch or the Frisian language. I felt a lot for the point Alexander was making at that time when he wanted to address not just the council but the city in English, because it was a very important point that he was making for non-Dutch speaking residents. And it was a very, actually a very painful moment, because I think he just wasn't allowed because the law told us he wasn't allowed. And it also got me to think, okay, this is a bit complicated, because outside of that room, we can talk to anyone in the city in any language, and we're, of course, using this birth of the union as a milestone in our history, but within the highest place of the city that has to decide we're only allowed to use 1 or 2 languages. And it would be very weird if we start debating in a Frisian language. I think none of us would be able to. So we have to use the Dutch language. So this is something that we really have to consider. If this is the law, and I'm not just here to make a positive point, this is just the way it is. It's also about being honest how the system works. Maybe we should really think with the next council on how to express what we do towards the city also in English. For example, council proposals, which are very extensive papers. Maybe, I'm not saying it would be easy, but maybe there's a way to see whether there can be a brief English summary of every council meeting on what did we decide on, what is the outcome of the motion or the debate, and what were maybe the main arguments of each party. And I believe we could do that in just maybe 1 or 2 pages per council meeting. I'm not saying it can be arranged in a month, but it would maybe be a thing that we could look into. And I feel that with the very many parties that are taking part of this in this election, I think most of those parties would actually feel for such a way in order to being also able to communicate what we are doing as a council. So not just for the mayor or the alderman, but for us as a council, because in the end, it's 39 people, but we have to represent a lot of people, and we have to, be honest and be open about what we decide on in every language. It's just, I wrote it down, summary of proposals, because it just popped up. Maybe that's 4 years too late, but let's see if it works out.
Thank you. Quota, you wanted to react?
I was just thinking about your question about obstacles for students to participate in the elections. And I think I very much have to support what Anne said about it, that it should be a real shame if students would, if it would all be in their head or in your head that we are divided between students and non-students in this city. That would be really a mistake. I mean, I, as a non-Maastricht born person, could feel the same thing about people speaking Maastricht to me, in Maastricht dialect to me. Some of my friends actually feel that way. They feel excluded too. And I really think, and I, for my part, feel much more connected to international students than I feel to many of the older people in Maastricht. So we should not think in this kind of divisions, I think. And if you want to be a part of the city, even if it is for 3 or 4 years, then you have a right to vote. I think you should use it, but that's up to you. But you should also make an effort, as Alexander said, to connect. And I think politicians should do the same thing towards everybody in town. And what language is spoken then in the council, how do we call it, hall or city hall, is not really that's not the main question. I think we should try and reach each other. You should feel, I hope you feel committed to this city. That's maybe the first city or the city that you first live in as an adult that will always stay with you. And you should not think of us, the non-students, as the other party. That would be really a shame. So.
Thank you, Klaartje. So when we were talking about the obstacles, and you were telling that it's not only about international students, but about the whole local community. What do you think, Anna, how the city society or Maastricht society could benefit when students would participate politically or start to voting, more people would start to vote?
If it's okay, I would first like to say in regards to the previous question in terms of like students and their involvement in politics itself. And that is just like as a tip for all of you out there who might feel like a little bit discouraged because of the language situation or anything like this. Because local politics is so intimate, it also means that a lot of people are very direct, like you can very directly contact them. And this is also, for example, how I got involved with the party. It's because I was doing organizing for like like protests and this kind of stuff, because I was very concerned about certain issues. And then I also realized very quickly that there were people that you could contact, and you could just shoot them a Facebook message and they would respond to you. You could invite them for stuff. You could even just send like an email saying, okay, I have these and these questions. Could I get an answer to this? And most of the, like very often you will actually get an answer about that. And even if you cannot, if you're not aspiring to be in the council, as I'm gonna butcher your name now, I'm so sorry, as Gisep already said, a lot of parties already have non-Dutch speaking people also that, for example, attend the meetings and then still on that way can have some kind of say when it comes to local politics, which very often you will also be facilitated in. So in that case, just for you out there who feel that the municipality might be like this scary thing or this disconnected thing, it is closer than you think it is, but it's also very easy to get very close to. So therefore, I would definitely recommend that if you have any sort of issue that you feel that you have within Maastricht, then also just make sure to communicate that. And feel free to, don't be scared to. That's mostly just what I'm trying to say. And I forgot your question, I'm sorry.
No worries. You were mentioning that the housing problem is not only a problem of international students, but of the whole local society. And when students would start to vote, those obstacles would be overcome. What do you think the society or Maastricht would benefit from the votes of students or the participation of students?
I mean, students all in all make up like a very large part of the city, but also a very large part of like where the money comes from within the city. And in that sense, it's also in a way quite important. I mean, they make up an important part for this. Sorry, I'm like repeating myself in circles right now. Students make up a part of a city, and that's important. And when it comes to politics, what you have to take into account are the experiences of people, how they perceive the city. And you, as a student, will have experiences also again that might very much overlap with non-student experiences. And if you, as a student, can make that known, that means that you also could make that known for someone else who might not do so or might not know how to do so or is unsure if they, basically how to go about this. So it's just very important in that regard. Secondly of all, there's also certain, at least what we're hoping for example, also with the GroenLinks party, is to achieve also certain circularity when it comes to student life. I mean, it's already been said, it's very much a shame that a lot of students leave Maastricht almost immediately after they're done so, despite the fact that they could mean a lot to the city. For example, people who study medicine, it would be amazing also if afterwards they could be given like opportunities to work at the hospital here and thus also give back to the city. And in all of this, it's very important that students also feel welcome but also feel represented in the city. And but also by that you're also sorry, I feel like I'm trailing off completely right now. I'm a little bit, yeah. No, what I'm just trying to say is we're all citizens of the city. We all experience problems a certain way, and I think students make up a large contribution also what is happening in the city, and that's why it's important.
Thank you, Anna. So, Alex, you wanted to add something on that question?
Yes, but before I do, I want to congratulate Anna because I know how difficult it is, intimidating it can be, so good that you're speaking up. To the point of Maren, about the law, challenging the law, I want to make this important point. One of my favorite quotes, if you indulge. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. I think that as lawmakers, as legislators, we have a duty, a responsibility to challenge the law if it's not a very smart law. So I would call my colleagues here and beyond to let's actually talk in different languages, let's talk in dialect, let's talk in English in the council, and let this capital city punish us with a bill or whatever. We will keep representing our people. On the point of housing, because I feel that that's what you wanted the debate to go to, students are an intrinsic part of the solution, simply put because what we are witnessing today in Maastricht is nothing else. Well, there are many factors playing, but one of the dominating factors is that the latest addition to the economic profile of the city, the portfolio, let's say, is the exploitation on the housing market. Students are simply a very interesting tenant to have, because very often the parents, they pay without looking. And whether you like one way or the other, having the student housing problem solved will bring us a step closer towards solving the larger housing problem, which absolutely is a priority for all. We need to do many things for this. A couple of steps have been made with a motion from my colleague from GroenLinks, equally supported, I believe, by everyone actually. I think it was a unanimous vote for the stop. But it's just a beginning, and I think there's so much more which we can do. And the underlying issue here, and this is what we have to be very aware of, because this is what I meant with a demographic shift. There basically is what we call a student quota when it comes to the student housing. And this has been imposed out of a reactionary policy towards the feeling that students are taking over the city center. And they have. We haven't yet conciliated the different lifestyles. And that is a problem which we should address separately, because this is a problem which I see in many other policy fields, is that we're trying to counter one problem with a policy instrument from another. And that is what makes it so impossible to oversee.
Sorry, I need to interrupt you here.
The
in
second
regard
time.
of the time. Jules first, and then Giuseppe, and then we will close the panel discussion and may come to your questions or the questions they were asked online. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we're now a bit like two parallel discussions. So on the one hand, really like how do you include different language groups into our politics, and on the other hand, housing, and indeed, as Alexander pointed out, they are quite intertwined. But one thing concerning how to inform and how to involve non-Dutch speaking Maastrichtians into local politics, I was pretty shocked to find out only previous week that the English-speaking part of the local media, RTV Maastricht in English, is not being funded by the local government, whereas the Dutch-speaking part is. And that is for one very big reason a problem, because how do you actually involve citizens into politics? Well, really through funded media initially, because media is there to make more understandable bits and stories of rather dull meetings in the city council that come to very important conclusions and decisions. So that would be, I think, a very concrete first step to actually involve more people. If you look at social media, Maastricht in English is rather well followed by a big part of the international community in the city. I think it would only be a democratic responsibility to give that a financial platform to some extent. So that would be the first part of this discussion. And the second one, which was really about housing that Alexander pointed out. Let me give one last example of my time when I was studying in Tartu in Estonia. I'm sorry that I have to do this once again, but also there they did a pretty good job. Unlike, Maastricht politics. The first email that I received when I signed up for a study there was from the university saying, hey, this is our campus. these are the prices, these are the ranges, and these are the sizes. Which one would you like? You can also, by the way, go live in the city center. Then you have to take the inhabitants of the city center more into account, because some of them have to work early. But if you want to have a student party life, which I really wanted at that point, then you're more than welcome to go to the campus, and you actually get a very affordable housing. So you had, first of all, you had actually the decision to live either in the city center or at a campus. Here in Maastricht, you don't have that decision. You are always forced to live next to local inhabitants. And that decision, no, I mean, but this should be a decision, I think. I think you should have the liberty to decide between those two things, because at some point I started to move to the city center in Estonia because I wanted to. But I was very happy that in the first period of my study, I actually had the full freedom to live my student life in a campus. So give that opportunity to people. So that's really the first thing. And the second thing is that there was actually coordination from politics, right? People who move to Maastricht are really being left into some dark box, and they have no idea where they have to go. And I really think that if you as a city have the ambition to have a leading international university in English, and you want to keep it growing, which I completely agree with, then you also have political responsibilities. But those responsibilities are often not taken locally, and that is really the biggest shame, I would say.
Thank you, Jules. So I will direct one last question to Giuseppe, and then we can take questions from the audience, both online and offline. So for Giuseppe, feel free to briefly react to the statements of your previous speakers. I have one direct question to you, because you previously mentioned that you feel that the city really takes its residents so serious, and that of course includes the students that they decided to include them in the elections. Of course, the same goes for all the other municipalities in the Netherlands and in the EU, since it's of course also an EU rule that EU nationals have to vote in municipal elections. So you told me you have been relatively recently joined the municipal council. So on your first impression, how did you feel? Was this rather seen as a burden or as a benefit, the way it's being discussed in the town hall and in the council, the role of international citizens?
Okay, thank you. Well, I already wanted to react to Anna, so I'll start there for a bit. I thought Anna had a really good point about, you can always reach any of these parties sitting here. If you are not a Dutch speaker, send us emails, go after us. We all have somebody who speaks English, of course. And what I think the beauty of it is that we had a lot of students. Last time we had our general members meeting where we vote on the party program. Like everybody here voted at some point on their party program. What are we going for? Because even parties are not static. Sometimes we also change our opinions over time. So for instance, we had a lot of old people sitting in the room, and they wanted, on Sunday the supermarkets are not open from 8 till 10, but they're only open from 1 till 5. And we had quite some older people who didn't want that to stop, they wanted to keep that. But all the young people and all the students, they changed that. They said, no, we want it to be open on Sunday as well. We understand some Catholic culture in that, but we have so many students, and if I get hammered on Saturday evening, I want to get an orange juice on Sunday morning, like that's how it is. So you can really make a change, and you can really make a difference by joining, and join any party, or even just talk to them can already influence their opinion. So Alexander was talking about the housing situation. Well, I think we were kind of stupid as a municipality for like 20 years when we told all the construction companies, no, you are not allowed to build here because we think our student population is only going to grow by X% every year. It's insane, because every time the university did better and better and better, and more people came than we expected. So it's insane that we did that. We were against that, by the way. But and the last part, your question was the burden of benefit. Do I understand your question correctly if you say, are students a burden or a benefit?
No. I mean, it's really your impression, rather, how it's being discussed
in the council
as a relatively new council member. since it could be seen as a kind of an imposed rule from Brussels. Like international students, EU students at least, have to vote now in the city.
I think in the city council, I'm there now for 5 months as actually in the council itself. I've been there longer as a civil city council member. I think it's kind of mixed. You have some parties which see kind of students as like a threat to the way how we live here, and it's really annoying if your next door neighbor speaks Spanish and the other one speaks French. But I think the most of us, most parties, are actually really happy with the students. Maastricht has a lot of old buildings which are filled up with a lot of life and a lot of people. Professors work here. I've been ringing doorbells for a couple of weeks now, just going door to people. We have a lot of expats here who happily live here. And when I say like, we were on this ranking where expats said Maastricht is not that nice, and I said, how do you feel about that? I said, we love it here. Like, we decided to stay here. It's just that you need to find a job here. That's the most difficult part. If you speak Dutch, of course, it's very simple. But if you don't, then that's the big hurdle to take, I think, because most people are really happy to stay here. And I think most political parties also realize that, and also realize that maybe without this university, we would be in a village instead of a city. So.
Thank you, Giuseppe. We will have to jump in the Q&A. Do we have any questions in the audience? Oh, I see a couple. Do you want to start here in the front? Like, yeah.
Thank you. Hi, so my name is Martin. I'm with the local party MOED, which stands for Maastricht, Open, Eerlijk, Democratic, Democratisch. So since we're talking about housing, and I've read about the housing policy in Maastricht for a bit. There is some policy towards students, namely a quotum based on a number of students in certain streets. A number of streets are closed off for students because too many students are living there already, which I believe is the one and only policy where students are named in such specific terms. I'm also sad to say, Anna, that it seems to me that your alderman is one of the most frantic supporters of this policy, which I think is sadly quite discriminatory. So my question to you is very simple, yes or no. Do you support a quotum on student houses?
Okay, I think we have to go one by one, yes or no. Giuseppe, do you want to start?
No, we don't support a quotum. We think...
We'll have to,
come on, it was my turn. For
we'll
once,
have to
please.
keep this quite short. No. So ideally a yes or no.
No, we're not in favor of such a policy, but it is implemented now, so it is active now, as voted by an old city council. We've always been against it. We do think that you should build way more on just on the edge of the city center, so you don't have problems as much with people. And when there are things, then police should just come and, well, of course, first you should walk to your neighbor first and say, can the music go down a bit or a little? Because this is a policy just made out of scare. Okay. It's just because of fear. You know?
Yes, thank you. As quickly as possible, Jules.
I follow Giuseppe. Indeed, we're also not in favor of that. And that is, I mean, the main reason is because the policy is a rather cynical one too. It's a very short-term solution that will definitely not solve whatsoever the accommodation crisis. So housing should really be the priority for the entire city, because it makes the city more livable for everyone. It shouldn't only be a student priority, really. It should be a Maastricht priority, number one.
Maren?
Thank you very much. My party is in favor of this policy, not because it's a quotum against students, it's a quotum against certain ways of living in living areas that are broader than just students. We are very aware that it's not a very positive or very popular instrument. We see it as an instrument that helps in ensuring the livelihood for all people that live in the city in specific areas where the balance, because this is a thing that we have to keep in mind, balance was really gotten out of hand. Of course, it is an instrument that shouldn't stand on its own. We cannot say, oh, we have this instrument and by then everything is solved. No, of course, we should invest in campuses, so bigger resident areas for students where they can also do the things that Jules mentioned, as to the extent that I understood what he did there. But also, and this is an important remark that I need to make here, because in the housing policy, the broader housing policy that a municipality has to deal with, we also have to ensure that there will be, let's just say, housing options or family houses for students after student life. To be very honest, I have to make sure that students can live in the city, but I also have to protect that I want you to stay, and I cannot ask you to stay in the city if there's either no job opportunities for you, also no housing for you. Because let's face it, if we're done studying, we are looking for another housing option. This is just how it goes. I also moved from a student house to an apartment. Would I like to buy a house by now? Yes, I really want to, but I can't. Because a lot of the family houses, which I would have been able to afford, which are big or small enough for me and my partner, are being taken by investors and being split up to student rooms. Is that good for the students? Well, maybe because they have more opportunities. Is that good for people who want to stay here after studying? No. And this is also, it's not just a matter of just housing options for students. It's a bigger problem, it's a very broad problem, and we have to be honest about all the groups that want to live in this city, but also want to stay in this city. So I have to be honest, 4 years ago when I joined the council, I also told my party, why are we in favor of this instrument? Why? Because it seems very, Martin used the word discriminatory. I can imagine why people would say that. After 4 years of talking to students and non-students and all kinds of people in this city and reading and listening to the much broader issue, I know that it's not a great instrument, but it's one of the instruments that we have at hand right now. Okay. Should we invest more time and money into looking into better solutions? Definitely.
I see. We should have another debate on housing. Very briefly, Anne Lucas.
I'll try to keep it brief also because Maren pretty much already said what I would have said. That is that Maastricht is what we make out of it together. And also that, again, subdividing issues such as housing and a student issue and a non-student issue is just not gonna work. We have to kind of make sure that we have balanced neighborhoods. And also as I said before, it's very important that we do invest in student housing, but there are different ways to do so. For example, by building a campus. This is also something that we fully support.
Okay, Alex, very briefly.
I cannot. This is one of those questions where I vehemently reject the position taken by my colleagues here. Not only is this a bad instrument which is discriminating against students, but when we have reached a point when this year, and I was actually, with just my few colleagues, the one who was actually raising this issue on the agenda. We've reached this point this year that over 400 students in September, October were still looking for a house and were living in a hostel, in a B&B, you name it. Cases of harassment, of abuse, the worst type, coming to the fore. And that we still pretend that we have the luxury of talking about livability is disgusting to me, to be honest. Yes, there needs to be bigger solution to this. I think that one of the solutions is not so much the livelihood or the housing policy itself. I think it is a question of integrating the nightlife more than anything else, because it is at nightlife that you have the most complaints. I've just proposed a motion which has been accepted unanimously. I'm very proud of this, which goes a step towards this. But let's be clear, I mean, the housing policy such as we have it right now is not inspired by progress, it's inspired by fear. And this is the first thing which we should turn around.
Okay, I think we have hit all the candidates' positions. This was a question to the parties, but of course also please ask questions to Professor Klaas-Peters if you have any questions on the substance of the matter, on the system of regional governance. I think there was previously one question in the back, if that's still on.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Max. I've been living here for, I think, 5 years now, and I work at the university, so this is my second local election now. What I still can't get to wrap my mind about is, suppose we get all students to go out to vote, what happens then? Because the agendas of the parties are set. We can't all go and join VVD or PvdA and then make our voices heard there. And participation even starts on a simpler level, and this is, for example, filling out a regular form at the municipality, and not even this is really available in English for people who are new to the city, for example. So what are your ideas about this? How can we truly get people to participate more than just vote?
I saw Alex and Jules raise their hands, and Giuseppe. Okay.
Thank you, Max. This is an excellent question. And I'm proud to say this is one of the few points where I very much diverge with the rest of my colleagues. My proposal, my party, is built on the idea that political parties should become incubators for citizen initiatives. So that means that basically you have any idea, be it you want to change like local policy or you want to have like an extra municipal garden, you can come to us and we will provide you with the platform and the support in order to make your idea become a proposal and you then advocate it yourself in the city council. This is one of those examples where I believe that we need to reinvent democracy. And this is also, by the way, one of the things which I would very much like to have actually our professor here, Mrs. Peters, to reflect upon as well, because that's what I was basically my opening statement. I'm afraid that we do. I question very often in how far we are in a democracy, and we're not much more actually in a party state. And I think that as long as we do not change this, it becomes more and more difficult for individuals, be they students, be they whoever, to impact the environment and to participate and to gain trust again in the system.
Okay, Jules?
Yeah, thank you. Other than, I think, Lurving's very inspiring idea, I really believe so. It's very inspiring and to learn from. We as Volt, we also believe that, well, something that I also mentioned earlier in this event is that you really have to start thinking of institutionalizing the debate locally. And in Aachen, Volt is doing that already. In East Belgium, it already exists. A Burgerraad or a council of citizens where random citizens, although reflecting different groups economically, linguistically, gender-wise, etc., come together and actually recap themes and topics that are about to be decided upon in the city council, to really keep that conversation going, not just once in 4 years in a space like this, but to actually make it an institutionalized tradition in the city. But there's also one thing that I would like to point out to you and to the other people in this audience about your very understandable concern whether political parties are going to keep on listening to you after these elections. And I think I can talk on behalf of all the parties here that there's a reason why we are sitting here and why other parties in Maastricht are maybe not sitting here. What I'm actually trying to tell you and others in this audience is not necessarily to go vote for us, even though I would like you to, obviously, but to go vote for one of the parties that have made very concrete steps and reached out very concretely towards your group. Because believe it or not, many parties in the city council in Maastricht really do not care about that. And I think that is something that you can take into account in this election. It's not as much as voting for a particular political party, but really voting for a cultural shift in the politics here so that you are becoming part of the dialogue locally.
Zip?
Yeah, thank you, Max. It's a great question. Well, first of all, I do think you can exert a lot of influence by voting, so I don't think that's like completely correct if you say we cannot join a political party, and because all these parties here, if you really start reading our programs and you really start reading all the points we have, we really differ on a lot of topics, especially if you count the parties which are not here today. So I think you can really influence how the whole city of Maastricht goes, left, right, progressive, conservative, whatever, by voting. On the other hand, I do understand that you say like you want to do something like input. I'm kind of wondering, what do you mean exactly by that then? Because I understand you sometimes have a committee or something, people who get together for something in their street or in their neighborhood. Then they come by to us, you know, we have a faction meeting before the council meeting, then they come by, they talk about their problems with us, then we take it into consideration. Then a lot of times we do something with it as well. So we're very accessible, all the political parties. I'm pretty sure anyone here, if you ask them, can I stop by with my group of people because we have this issue, they're always open to it. I couldn't imagine anyone not being that. And I do think we have to keep into consideration that we are a representative democracy. So Professor Peter said 15 hours a week. Well, I can tell you it's about 25 hours a week, sometimes more. Yeah, average. Yeah, well, I do a lot then. But so we take a lot of time to read a lot of proposals, do a lot of groundwork. We have civil servant assistants, like you can go to a civil servant and then ask them about policies, what's behind it exactly. We just were talking about a certain topic in the city council. I'm 5 months old, so I don't know everything about a project which is ongoing for 14 years. It took me 3 hours together with like a head, like civil servant, like a really top guy, to explain me everything about just one proposal. So it does take a lot of time to understand the implication of a lot of policies. And I was like, from the outside of politics, I was in favor of certain things. And then when I go look really deep into them, you change your mind because contracts have been signed in the past or these kind of technical things. Therefore, we do have a system which works that way. So we're not in favor of making small Soviets or something.
Okay, thank you. We will hear from Anne and from Maren.
Yeah, it's like had been mentioned before, and as well, is that just because the municipality feels very distant quite often for a lot of students, that does not mean that that political parties make their party program without students in mind. And you will also see vastly different approaches towards students very often, also in different party programs. So this is why it's still like very important that you do vote, but also. Again, it's like maybe I said already 4 times, is that something that you might, like maybe if you feel that like a lot of issues that we have, and there are issues that we have that are experienced by everyone, basically within the city, and especially also in those, this is something where you can exact some kind of influence if you do go out to vote. And additionally, also, of course, when it comes to afterwards, is that you have to see a party as and as kind of like a vehicle to get your own ideas across. And especially in local politics, you have very much the there's like a kind of like a large degree of input that you can have in all of this. So indeed, what's been said is that if you have any ideas, if you have any concepts or anything like this, just see what party might fit best with this, or maybe even like parties that might not fit best with it, but still see if there's like somewhere that you can kind of like how you say to sparren? It's kind of that you can that you can kind of bounce ideas also back and forth on, and in that way you can still make sure that kind of how you feel about a certain matter can get across. So in that way, it's still very important for you to also engage with politics, even if the party programs are already made, to still stay engaged with it.
Thank you, Maren.
Thanks. As I understood your question, Max, it was also about party programs that are already been made and been written, and then there's the elections, and then what? So we could basically do anything we'd like to because the programs are established. What I've learned over the past few years is that there is not as much time in those 4 years as I would have wanted to implement all the great ideas in my party program 4 years ago. often we are also steered by well, I don't want to mention, I don't want to use the word crisis, but even aside from the COVID situation, we are often been challenged as a municipality council by things that pop up. So things that happen in our city that we have to respond to, that nobody maybe realized even to put in their programs. And this is where you still have a very important role. Because if we are being confronted as the council member with a proposal from one of the aldermen or with a situation that actually happens in the city and we are able to file motions or have the debate with the alderman, then there's still plenty of room, I would say, at least as I experienced with my party, is that we also got a lot of input from residents throughout Maastricht, all kinds of people. I would like to emphasize that because we have been addressed by a lot of different kinds of people to speak on a certain topic. Because I can also imagine that you wouldn't be interested in any topic, in everything that happens in the city, but maybe you have specific interests. So it might take you some work to see whether something like something that interests you is being put on the agenda or that happens in our city. But if you read something in the news or whatever, you can still address the council. You can still participate in a specific proposal. So the programs are the start of 4 years. They're also let's just say, the foundation for a coalition program that has to be drawn up by some parties. We have 23 parties taking part in the election. Even if, let's say, 16 or 17 parties make it into the council, these coalition talks will, I believe, well, it will take some time because everyone has to sit with everyone. So I think there's still some time to bring in some influence. So good luck, but keep up the good work.
Thank you, Maren, and the other candidates. And in the interest of time, we will give the very last word to Professor Peters.
I was just going to say also in response to Alexander, this is not the time for a lecture on differences between representative and direct democracy, but in response to Max, I think it is difficult for municipalities and for all governments to really listen to what citizens want, either students or other citizens. And I did this little research project in Maastricht a few years ago on what we call burgerinitiatieven, citizen initiatives, and it is very, very difficult for a bureaucracy like a municipality to actually open itself up to ideas and plans and projects from bottom up, from outside. But the municipality really has to start doing that more, whether it's student initiatives or other initiatives. I really think that doesn't make a difference. And if you really want to, I think your generation, especially if I may say that as an old person, your generation especially knows very well how to, make yourself heard and make yourself seen. And these are the people that you can do that through, because if you make sure you are in social media and in traditional media, if you are seen and heard, then they will have to do something with that. So you are, especially I think, you guys are able to make yourself heard if there is something that you really, really want them to listen to, and you will have to do the effort, I think. And it will take a lot of struggle, but that's the way bureaucracies work. So I could talk about that for hours. I won't.
So thanks to all the panelists, and thanks for the questions from the audience. Just some closing remarks. You can find further information of everything here on the municipality website, of course. There you can also find the STEM white, I hope I pronounced it correctly, where you can make a test and look which party fits you best. So if you plan to vote, you should do that maybe as well, because there are many other parties. And then if you want to have even more information, there was a RTV debate last week in English, and you can have a look on that again. And now thank you again to all the panelists. Thank you for your time. Take care and arrive home safely.